One. Hello, everybody. This is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, and I am your host, Craig Pera from themindfulhabit.com, your path to freedom. I'm the founder of the Mindful Habit System, and this is a podcast to help you create healthy sexuality and a great life. And this is also a podcast to help the partners of men struggling with compulsive sexual behavior. Today, we're going to be talking about triggers. You've heard me talk about triggers before, but today we're going to talk about it from the perspective of the partner. And I have a very special guest to help me do that. Sandy Joy, who runs the Partner Empowerment Group with me, one of her many important things that she does. She holds a master's degree in counseling psychology, is a registered psychotherapist, a certified clinical traumatologist, a qualified clinical counseling supervisor. She's in charge of the other counselors and therapists, and she is proud, her words, to be a certified coach of the Mindful Habit System. She's worked, ladies and gentlemen, in private practice in Ontario for over 20 years. I want you're going to be hearing more from Sandy. You've heard me talk to Sandy about her own personal journey and podcast before. The last podcast that we did on Betrayal Trauma was just off the hook. It had brought a number of men to tears. And I'm so glad that she's here. She works with people who struggled with, people who've experienced domestic violence, abuse, sexual assault, childhood sexual abuse, as well as people who've experienced severe trauma and/or grief. And of course, this includes partners of people struggling with sex and porn addiction. Welcome, Sandy. I'm so glad you are here.
Thank you, Craig. It's an honor.
Oh, no, honor is all mine. So today, well, last time we did a podcast, that was the Betrayal Trauma podcast. And the feedback that we got on that, Sandy, has been just so overwhelming from the perspective of, well, what did you hear from the partners about our Betrayal Trauma podcast?
In a word, validation, huge validation. The other, I will say, is that the most common comment was, "Thank you, I'm not going crazy."
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that. And that was our goal. And from the guy perspective, and I'm telling you, listener, about this because if you haven't heard it and you are in a relationship, you need to hear our Betrayal Trauma podcast. A number of men have emailed me and told me that it brought them to tears when they truly reflected on their actions and the pain and the trauma it caused their partners. And as a result of that pain and trauma, partners tell us all the time, they get triggered, don't they, Sandy?
Absolutely. Triggers are huge, and they're trauma triggers. They're not triggers to shame. They are trauma responses. Triggers are trauma responses.
So let's talk about that. What are triggers, Sandy?
So triggers are something that stimulates the automatic negative emotional response. They involve all of the senses. So seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, etc. All of the senses. And there's something as innocuous as a certain day of the week. Okay, from my own experience, the D-Day for me was a Wednesday. Wednesdays were difficult days for me, and I would wake up and not even really remember that it was a Wednesday, but my body did. And there would be responses, automatic responses. Other things can be a number, a name, or words that bring back flashbacks and or painful memories crashing to the forefront, in our lives. And a trigger is a reminder of past trauma and is always something that is external to us.
And it's so important and ladies, the reason why we're doing this podcast is because there's so much resources being dedicated to your man, right? If he's waking up and he's doing the right thing, he's getting help. But we find that partners, they don't want to they don't want to be the guy's mother, Sandy. They don't want to be a nag, and sometimes I even hear I don't want to do anything to jeopardize his recovery, like he's this fragile eggshell. And some men are. Let me be clear on that. Some men, as they're going through this journey, are, and like you mentioned, there's triggers everywhere. That something on TV. I think back when my breathing, my existence was triggering to Michelle. Every time I left the house, every time I picked up the phone, every time I was on the computer. And so they're so impactful. There's actually something going on in the brain. What happens to the brain in trauma, Sandy, and how does this relate to triggers?
Okay, so when we are triggered, and again, as I said, triggers are external to us. So there's something that we cannot control, and we may actually only know maybe 1% of all the triggers. We could have thousands of triggers, okay, that we don't even know that they are triggers. Our body knows, though. So what happens is when there is a trigger, our emotional memory center, which holds every single emotion we have ever felt from the moment we are born to the day we die. So in this present moment, the moment we are born to this very present moment. So I'm going to use my hand to show the brain. And I'm going to start with the prefrontal cortex as the front. Okay. This is where we have logical reasoning, decision-making, and visual memory. But visual memory is only a tiny, tiny snapshots of points in time. It's not like a DVD that you put in from the moment you wake up to the moment you went to sleep. You remember from last Tuesday, every single thing you did, you wore, you ate, who was there, the conversation, et cetera, et cetera. The more impactful a visual memory on either end of the spectrum, the more visual memory we have of it. So if I say to you, last Christmas, you may be able to remember what you wore last Christmas, what you ate, who was present, around you. Maybe not all of the conversation, but you would have more visual memory than possibly last Tuesday, unless last Tuesday was an impactful day for you, either end of the spectrum. Okay. In the middle of the brain is the amygdala, and the amygdala is our emotional memory center. And unlike our visual memory, our amygdala remembers every single emotion, like I said, from the moment we are born to this very second. The only thing it doesn't keep it in consecutive order. It doesn't keep our emotions in consecutive order. It keeps it in the most impactful time. So we may have a trigger. So you mentioned TV show. So there may be a TV show, or the ringing of a phone, or a text message coming through, or an email coming through that could be triggering for a partner, but it actually takes them back to D-Day, or back even before another time where they felt incredibly powerless. If we don't listen to what the message our body is sending us, because our body is telling us that there's a trigger, that we're not feeling safe, we don't tend to heed those messages, and that's where the mindfulness piece comes in. If we don't heed it, the amygdala sends a warning to the prefrontal cortex that, trauma's happening right now, go into survival mode. And to go into survival mode, if we don't heed, go into survival mode, the prefrontal cortex closes a door. Now, we don't have access to logical reasoning or decision-making or visual memory. We're in now 100% emotion. The body is seeking safety when this happens. We're not safe, it's survival. When the prefrontal cortex closes a door, it triggers the brain stem, which is the reptilian brain, to do the freeze, fight, or flight. We all go into the freeze at first. The majority of us, it's just a nanosecond. Think of if you hear a siren, we all just stop and look. That's the freeze. Some people stay in the freeze. The majority of us either do the fight or flight. Fight is anger. Anger is a defense mechanism. It's a secondary emotion. Many of us experience anger, but secondary emotion. And why is it secondary? Because it actually covers us when we're actually feeling powerless, vulnerable, fear, and or sadness. So it can be all four, one of those, or a combination thereof. The anger is a way, it's a shield. And it's a shield in order for us to feel a little bit of power, or at this, the belief that we have power. And it's about pushing people away. When we're angry, we push people away. And so you can get yourself safe. Because when we're alone, the fear starts to come down, the emotion starts to come down, the seeking safety comes up. When we're back in homeostasis, the prefrontal cortex will open the door again. Now we have access to logical reasoning and decision making again. Think about a time that you might have been angry, and afterwards you go, why was I so angry? Like, that situation doesn't seem to warrant it now. But then, I know I was really angry, and did I say those things? And we're questioning because we don't have full memory of it. We know we did something, but we question. Have you ever done that, Craig? Why was I so angry?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, my life, Sandy, is paying attention to those triggers, that
Right.
energy shift in the body
Yes.
from positive to negative. And
Yes.
anger, in my secondary emotion, I have an expression that certainly applies to me. The bigger the anger, the smaller the inner child.
Yes.
I've got to get big
Yes.
because I feel so small. I know what you mean.
Right. So what's happening in that? So on the other, I'm just going to go to this. On the other side of anger, the fight is the flight. Flight is anxiety, and it's still the same. Rather than pushing people away, it's leaving. I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. I'm not taking part in this. I'm just going. Same thing. Prefrontal cortex trying to get safe. Same thing is happening. When you're talking about that inner child, Craig, quite often that powerlessness and those triggers not only take us back for partners to D-Day, but can take you back to when you were 5 and felt completely and utterly powerless over something that was happening and going on. And our body remembers, and our body believes that trauma is happening right now. So the key to keeping the prefrontal cortex open is to listening to what's happening in our body and then honoring it. Not trying to push it away, not trying to say, I'm fine. It's saying, you know what? I'm really not feeling safe right now. What can I do for myself?
And so when the partner gets triggered, there's this like automatic, instantaneous, guttural, almost primal reaction, Sandy. And so, we hear from so many of them that they stuff it down, they ignore it. How does this trauma impact the partner's response to these triggers? What happens? I want you ladies who are listening, if you take anything from this podcast, is to treat these triggers as like an alarm clock that tells you that you need something, because that need isn't being met in that moment. But what happens? How does this trauma impact their response to triggers, Sandy?
Okay. Well, as I said, triggers are very, very powerful. They're incredibly powerful, and they involve any and or all of the senses. Okay. Smells are a large component, of that memory. So the more sensory memory that we have, so smells, sights, sounds, those are sensory memories. The more sensory memory we have, the more impactful the trigger. Okay.
Wow.
And the more impactful the event or situation, the more memory we have of it, which makes the trigger more impactful. So during a traumatic event, the brain frequently instills sensory stimuli into memory. Okay, sensory stimuli goes into memory. When a person experiences a similar stimulus, so it can be just, again, a word, a phrase, a feeling, the day of the week, they associate the trigger with the trauma. For example, TV shows where infidelity is prominent are huge triggers.
Right.
And that's daytime TV now, right? That's daytime TV. So you can imagine the later the shows are on night, the more triggers there may be.
Right.
Okay. I didn't realize for myself how much sex and infidelity was talked about in Big Bang Theory. Loved watching it. Comedy, I had to stop. Family Feud, game show. Do you know how often a question about infidelity or husband cheating is asked? Had to stop watching.
And what I like about those examples, Sandy, is it doesn't have to be seeing, like something that's like you don't have to see like a sex scene on a TV show of somebody cheating on their partner.
Right.
It's literally like a comedy. It could be a smell of something that they experienced when they received this information or started to discover that their husband was lying and cheating.
Yes. I'll give you an example. I was sorting receipts getting ready for income tax. Okay. So I was sorting receipts and putting them, and there was a number of receipts in a row of specific dates on which I had just recently found out about my ex had been having affairs and acting out. And that was after like a full disclosure. And I was sorting these receipts. Something as simple as a lunch receipt had a date on it. And I was triggered. And I had to stop sorting. And I was crying. I was hysterical, actually. I just had to go look after myself. I had to stop what I was doing and just go look after myself because of a date on a receipt. Actually, there was about 3 in a row.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm so glad we're using those examples, and we're going to talk in a little bit about what you, the partner, can do to honor and respect those triggers. But let's first talk about what happens if the partner doesn't prioritize their self-care, doesn't prioritize self-love, and isn't mindful about these triggers. What happens then?
So for a partner who's pushing these uncomfortable feelings away, I'm sorry, partner, ladies, it's going to come and bite you in the butt. And you'll have an explosion because your body can't hold it. It can't hold it when it's so traumatic. You try and you may be successful for a few weeks or a month, but it will come back and it will come out in health issues. You will be getting headaches, more headaches, stomach aches. I had pneumonia 3 times in 6 months. It comes out when we try to put this stuff, compartmentalize it. No, this isn't bugging me. I'm going to just look after him.
Or this is his problem. Like he's got to deal with it. And yes, while he does, but the partner isn't doing anything for herself. And, it's literally a traumatic response. So ladies, every time you get triggered, and, like, imagine if that was your child, being, and I listen, these are tough things to think about, but I want to inspire you to get help. And betrayal trauma is a real thing. It's not some made up thing. It's a real thing. And it's literally akin or is like a post-traumatic stress response. I mean, it's that physiological toll on the body that you can read about that has on people who struggle with PTSD. Same thing here, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So it's really, really important that we care for ourselves. We listen to the messages our bodies are sending us, and we listen and we do some self-care, something that fills us, something, whether that is going for a walk, having a soak in the tub, making yourself a cup of tea, leaving the situation. It doesn't mean you're brushing it under the rug. Make an appointment with your partner and say, this is really important to talk about. So let's say it's something that you're talking about that's triggering, that say, it's really important. I'm just not feeling safe right now. Because what happens, Craig, is when we're closed, okay? And let's say one partner's closed and the other remains open. And I know I want to talk about this. This is what happens when you're trying to discuss an issue.
Right. The fist punching the hand.
Right? If you're both closed,
Two fists bumping each other.
Two fist pumping. It's just like you might as well be hitting your head against the wall, because that's exactly there's nothing good can come out of this. Nothing good can come out of this. It's when you both can remain open, when you both are looking after yourself and saying, okay, I'm feeling unsafe. It's not the other person making you unsafe. It's the triggers or whatever the situation is. Doing something for yourself, because when you're both open, you can come together, you can do this.
But wait a minute, I want to play devil's advocate, and we hear this from some of our awesome partner clients in our partner empowerment group. Mm-hmm. But wait a minute, if I don't react this way, how's he going to know how much he's hurt me? Are you telling me I don't have the right to be angry? Are you telling me to stuff it down? How do you respond to that gut reaction that some partners might be having right now?
It is not about stuffing it down. Please don't stuff it down. Feel those uncomfortable feelings. It's what you do with the anger. Because if you're screaming at him, I can guarantee you he's not listening and he's shut down. Because who likes to be screamed at? And yes, you can let him know your pain. You can let him know what this is doing for you. But if you're shutting down, if you're triggered, you're not in a place of safety to be able to have that conversation. And he may then not be in a place to hear it. In order to have your partner hear what you need him to hear, and actually not only hear, but listen, because there's a difference between hearing and listening, and to try to have some sort of empathy or understanding, you both have to come from a place of healing. And that's your body's, those triggers are your body's way of saying, go look after yourself. You deserve it.
And I think that is one of the most important lessons of the podcast for you ladies, because the question that, we ask the partners that we work with in our partner empowerment group is, and, they will share 50 reasons that justify their anger, their hurt, and their pain. And they'll share with us this reaction. And I'll ask, is that reaction serving you? Right. Is it helping you accomplish your desired objective of helping him connect with your pain? And what's the answer to that question? No, he's not listening, right? He's not. He shuts down. He stuffs it down. And there's also, I'm just going to speak from the addict brain here for a second. It's difficult to say some of these things, Sandy, when I think about some of the things I've done. But when Michelle was yelling at me and screaming at me and freaking out, my sick manipulative brain said, as long as she's pissed, she cares. So there was a manipulation component to it. Yeah. And the other part was, you wonder why I do what I do. I mean, look at her. Look at you. What are you doing? And cruel. We talked about this in the Betrayal Trauma podcast. To be clear, my behavior was abusive. Absolutely abusive. And my crazy brain, sick brain, used it as almost a justification for my behavior.
Yes.
And I'm saying that to you because I know that your husband is projecting authority onto you. He's likely projecting, mother, and so, 7 out of 10, dentists, or 7 out of 10 people. It's a projection of, all a projection of authority, mostly a projection of mother. And I'll tell you, when in my relationship, when Michelle, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. When Michelle said to herself, I am going to stop trying to squeeze blood from a stone. I'm going to stop trying to get my needs met through this emotional cripple. And she used this crisis as an opportunity to empower herself, Sandy. When she checked out of that back and forth that had been such a pattern in our relationship for decades, two things happened. Number one, it freaked me out. Like she's gone. It lit a fire under me that brought me to the place I'm at today. It like, well, no way am I going to lose my family. Well, one thing, that's the one thing I wanted to say. It lit a fire under me. I wasn't able to blame her on things. And the second thing was I could hear her. I could listen, as defensive as I was when she came from a place of non-reaction, of empowerment. Not only was it scary, because that pattern was broken, the usual dynamic was no longer in play. Something had to change because she was gone. Yeah. I was able to hear her, and that started my journey to empathy, compassion, and love. And it's we want you to be heard. We want that message to get through.
Craig, I just want to add, when you were saying about the projection, quite often when the addict, is projecting, it's coming from a place of his shame, his anger at himself, and he projects onto her because it's so hard to feel those feelings himself. And he just takes that anger and uses it as an excuse and puts it on her, especially when she's screaming and hollering. And that's out of pain. That's out of pain that she's screaming and hollering, and yet it's not serving her.
It's making it worse, right, Sandy? It's literally
right. It's making it worse.
Physically, mentally, and spiritually, it is hurting her.
Absolutely.
So any other tips for partners to be mindful and to respond in a way that serves them? Like what can they do that, and you've covered a couple of things already. Just want to see if there are any others that are healthy and growth producing. What can the partner do?
So I'm going to just say about, can triggers be avoided? The answer to that question is no, they can't, because they're external to us, as I mentioned.
That's right.
But what we can do is we can listen to our body, and while we cannot control triggers, we can control our responses to triggers. And after a while, those triggers become less and less impactful when we feel them, when we're going to look after ourselves. So what we can do is we learn to control our responses to the triggers. How do we do that? I use the 3 A's of the mindful habit. The first one is that awareness. That's an awareness, a conscious awareness of our potential triggers, okay, and how our bodies react to those triggers. And what's your body telling you? Most often, the message is that you're not safe. What is happening in your body? To your muscles? Are they tightening up? What's happening in your gut? Does your breathing change? If so, how? How about your heart? Does your heart pump harder? Does it seem to slow down? Because when we slow down our breathing, our heart may slow down. Do you become warmer or colder? These are all ways, things that you can identify when you're being triggered. So
they're looking for, one point on that, Sandy, before you go on, they're looking for the physiological responses so they can use them as like, wait a minute, I have been triggered. The muscles tighten in the face, the chest constricts, they start sweating, the stomach gets upset, all those different physiological cues. That's what they should be looking for. Right?
Absolutely. And yet I'll get to the thought in a minute, because one of the thoughts ends up being that SOB. Because he did this to me. So one of the things I want you to know when we are triggered, okay, it's important to develop a dual awareness. And this is by psychologist Babette Rothschild, who's one of my mentors. I just love her. Describes an exercise that as being vital to keeping oneself grounded in the here and now while remembering distressing events. So you've got a trigger, it's distressing, D-Day stuff comes up, or trickle effect, information that comes. And so when we remember that, it's having a dual awareness that helps the person look at and work through the trauma trigger, okay? Thus, working through the trauma. Well, being secure in the knowledge that the person is actually safe in the here and really in the present moment. They're safe in this present moment and in their environment. So once you notice what's happening in your body, it's important to bring your awareness back into the room. Notice colors around you, objects. Pick up an object, feel it. What does it feel like? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it firm? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it cold? Is it warm? Yes, pick it up.
Could be a
Describe
teddy
it.
bear. For those of you listening to this podcast on audio, you can't see, but I've got Stormy, my teddy bear.
Yes.
That could help.
Yes. Absolutely. So just look in wherever you are. If you're in the grocery store, pick up something and feel it. Okay. The other is, what's the temperature of the room? What do you smell? Notice your breathing. Does it change when you change your focus of awareness? Does your breathing change when you change your focus of awareness? So there's more to the exercise, but you get the idea of what that's like.
And sorry, you go.
No, I was going to say, well, triggers also not only stimulate emotions, but they stimulate our thoughts as well. Okay. This leads me to the second A, which is accountability. And this is, how accountable are you to your thoughts? Are your thoughts sexual in nature? So could be for the partner, or it could be regarding a trigger. This could be for the addict or person, who's the partner. What are you going to do for yourself that is healthy and growth producing? Are your thoughts self-deprecating, such as I am not good enough? Or are you going to stop the lies that most negative thoughts are and change it to a positive, so wrong thought, right thought, and giving yourself evidence for the truth? Because we cannot give ourselves true evidence for negative thoughts, but we can give ourselves many evidentiary things for the truth for positive thoughts.
And it's not rainbows and unicorns. Like if you remember that old Stuart Smalley bit from Saturday Night Live, I'm good enough and I'm smart enough and gosh darn it, people like you. It's bringing awareness to an equally real reality that I have control. Yeah. I don't have to react. I am empowered.
Yes, absolutely. So when we give it truth, this brings us to the third A, which is actions. Right? Your actions will be a direct result of your level of accountability. No to low accountability will result in unwanted, harmful, detrimental behavior. So that's for all of us. High accountability will result in healthy, growth-producing behavior. Bottom line, it is a choice, and only one that you can make. No one can make it for you. So that's for all of us. You brought something to mind here, Craig, about habits. And habits and triggers are connected. Yeah. And how are they connected? So habits, as we know, are formed by doing the same thing in the same way, creating pathways in the brain. So the more we do the thing, whatever the thing is, our morning routine is a habit. We can do it half asleep. We get up and we just turn around and start making the bed, or we go into the washroom, or we go and plug the coffee pot on, put it on. And we don't even have to think about it. It's because it's in our subconscious. That's because we've done it consciously time and time again, that it's gone into our subconscious. That's how habits are formed. So following the same pattern saves the brain from having to make a decision. Okay? Like I said, our morning routine. If someone wishes to quit smoking, simply putting the coffee pot on may be a trigger if the urge to smoke, if they've usually had a coffee and a cigarette at the same time, or roughly one after the other in the morning. So putting the coffee pot on, something as innocuous as that. A person can be triggered even if they are not consciously aware of the connection between their behavior and their surroundings. And that is why the mindfulness is so incredibly important. That is why it is our make or break.
It is. It is.
It's our make or break.
And all those tips, ladies, that Sandy was giving you are all techniques to be mindful in the present moment, on purpose, without judging those thoughts, so you can choose, so you can react from a place of your center, your power. And that's, and I, being the guy here, I feel like I have to repeat myself and deliver that message again. I am not saying and trying in any way, shape, or form taking away. Like, no, to the contrary, I'm saying I don't want to take away from your pain. I want to say it's so bad, it's so painful, you need a structured response, or else it is going to eat you alive. And it is going to cause high blood pressure. It is going to impact your longevity. It's going to release the stress level cortisol. It's going to physically hurt your body, like Sandy mentioned earlier, the physiological pneumonia 3 times.
3 times in 6 months. The first time lasting 6 weeks.
In the body. And when it's in the body, you need a body response. And any other tips, Sandy, for partners before we wrap up?
Yeah, yes. I use an analogy when I describe our habits, our behaviors that we want to change, whether that's anxiety, whether that's repetitive thoughts, whether that's acting out with porn or sex, whether that's responding in anger. I want you to, if you will, for everyone, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to picture a beautiful meadow that's full of wildflowers. There's greens and green grass. The wildflowers are yellow, white, reds, purple, pink, blues. They're just, it's for as far as the eye can see, there's this beautiful meadow that is just so welcoming. And surrounding you can smell it. Yeah. You can see it, you can smell it, you feel the breeze on your face. Surrounding the meadow is a forest of beautiful trees. And there is a pathway. We arrive at the meadow and there's an already established path. It's dirt path, and our body just knows to go that way. And we go down that path and we arrive at a tree that's dead. It's not serving anything or anyone. It's not out offering nutrients. It is not offering protection from the weather, from the storms. It's not a safe haven for animals or even for us. It is dead. But that's the path, so that's the way we want to go. So every time you come to the meadow, you have to make a decision. Do I go to the path that my body is just automatically going to, or do I form a new path? And I go down through the meadow, stomping on some of the wildflowers, but they're still all around. And I arrive at this beautiful tree, and there's berries, or there's apples, or there's nutrients, and it's offering shade, from the hot sun, but it's also offering the sun's rays to come through. There's a place to lean up against it, that it's offering protection from the weather, from this wind, or whatever it is. It's offering safety, and it's healthy and growth producing. It makes us feel good, safe. And you have to find your way back to where you came from. Every time you come to the meadow, your body wants to go to the established path. But you have to be cognizant and aware and go, no, it's healthy this way. There's sustenance this way. I'm going to go this way. And over time, you will start to see a new pathway forming. And you won't have to choose, it won't be as hard to choose. You'll go, well, my body still wants to go this way because that's what I've always done. But I can see this path forming. I can go here and I'll get there quicker. The more you use that path, the quicker you will get to the place of healthy sustenance, safety. Eventually, the path on this side will start to grow green grass again, and wildflowers will start to fill up in here. It may take a while as you build this path, and soon you're going to come to that meadow and your body will automatically go this way. And why I go, this is left for me, that's the heart chakra. That's what's driven, the love. You'll feel it, you'll see it, you'll encompass it. And it's protection. So when we are second guessing ourselves and our body is pulling us in the way that's unhealthy, picture that meadow, create your new path. And over time, you won't have to think as hard. It will become second nature. It'll become, into your subconscious.
A new habit, right?
A completely new habit, but a new habit that's good, growth producing, healthy. So again, while triggers cannot be avoided for the most part with time and hard work, the impact they have can be greatly reduced or removed. This means the level of distress is also greatly reduced or removed.
And that is good for you. Yes. You have to, or we implore you, I beg you. I like to be careful when I say you have to. I don't want to sound bossy, but I hope if you've been listening to this podcast, you know how much Sandy and I care and want to help. And you can use this crisis as an opportunity to grow in ways that you couldn't even fathom. And if someone, Sandy, is ready to take that next step, and let's say they're interested in our partner empowerment group, there's an amazing community of women who are just changing their lives. And one point on the partner empowerment group, the way we've structured it is, this isn't to keep the relationship together group. No, it's not at all. This podcast, this program, the partner empowerment group, is to help empower you to heal from betrayal trauma and move forward with or without them.
Right. So this isn't about keep having you stay with your partner, but it's also not about encouraging you to leave. That's right. This is about helping you grow, helping you feel stronger, helping you feel empowered, that you have your power back, that you feel able to make decisions that are in your best interest.
What someone's listening to this, they're inspired to reach out, Sandy. How do people get in touch with you? How do they find you?
You can find me on my website at www.sandrajoy.ca or email me at Sandy, S-A-N-D-Y, at sandrajoy.ca. You can find me the Mindful Habit soon.
Yeah, we're going to add in our list of things, we've got to add Sandy to the website because she's such an important part of this team. And just so everybody knows, Sandy runs our partner empowerment group. And so we've got a structured curriculum that we've developed. And the way we structure it is Sandy does one of the group calls that we do with the partners. And then Michelle and I do another group call for the week. And I love that perspective and that dynamic. Women have found it so helpful. And what else, Sandy? Anything else you want to say before we?
I just want to say the partner empowerment group that I run on the Tuesdays is really for the partner to have a voice. So we talk about triggers. We talk about self-care. We've had a discussion about, do I stay or do I go? We've talked about safety and how you can, so it's whatever you need to talk about. It ends up being the theme of the night. And that's what we do. It's about you as a partner having a voice, and that your voice is heard, and that you meet other people who are going through very similar circumstances. We just had tonight 3 people, brand new, 2 of them, very similar circumstances, very similar in age, only a few years apart, I think 4 years apart in age, very similar circumstances. It's just uncanny how similar they are. We've had others that the same thing. And you can meet up with these people, then have a connection where if you don't feel you can talk to your friends because they're saying, kick them to the curb. What are you doing? What's wrong with you women? When and the only decision you need to make today, ladies, is no decision. Okay. Remember that. This partner empowerment group, this forum is for people just like you to help you feel safer, not so alone, and that you aren't the only one going through this. Unfortunately, there is many others that are going through.
So many, and so many of them feel so alone. And the partner empowerment group is included for no additional charge when men sign up for my group coaching program or my one-on-one. We had to do it this way because when we charged, the partners didn't want to commit the resources. Maybe the resources were going to him, or they don't want to commit to it themselves. So he said, you know what? We're going to include it. We're going to include it because we know that you need help and we can help you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for being here. I cannot wait for our next podcast. I'm so excited for what the future holds for us. I'm so blessed to have you, so talented, such an incredible healer on this team, and so many of the partners I know are benefiting from that. So thank you so very much.
And again, Craig, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you. I really do feel it's an honor and a privilege. And every woman that I help, every woman that gives me the gift of her pain, I'm honored. I'm honored to hold space and to be a part of it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, truly a privilege. Please reach out to Sandy. Give me the website one more time, Sandy.
www.sandrajoy.ca. So
awesome.
sandrajoy.ca. That's all you need.
sandrajoy.ca, or stop by the mindfulhabit.com. You can read about the partner empowerment group there. So proud. And for all the members of the partner empowerment group, we honor you. We honor you for sharing your pain with us, for trusting us with something so important, your sanity, your success, your future. It is truly an honor to be here. And I'm so excited for our next podcast. And guys, if you're listening to this, send it to your partner. Share this podcast with your partner. Partners need tools too. That was the void that we felt we needed to fill. And that's what makes, listen, guy, I mean, you already can tell by listening to her. Sandy is a genius. She's a brilliant woman. Her trauma qualifications and the depth of her knowledge, and put on top of that her own personal experience, and put on top of that the practical value of the mindful habit system. If you want to heal, please connect with us and connect with Sandy. Truly a privilege to be here, everybody. Thank you, Sandy, so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Honestly.
Bye, everybody. Embrace your power of choice and feed the right wolf inside you. And I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.